Thanks so much for joining us. For those that I haven't had a chance to meet before, my name is Brett from Friendship Tours, and I'm lucky enough to be the president of Friendship Tours. As you may know, we're located right in Bloomfield, and in Bloomfield, Connecticut, there are actually 9 of us in the office full time, and then our tour directors that are out on the road. And we were able to go ahead and pretty much in 2020, we were able to run some trips from August all the way into November. Then we started back up in 21 in March and went all the way through, and we've pretty much been running trips throughout. And so if you have questions about our safety and any of those issues, we actually have right on our website, friendshiptours.net, a little area, and it tells you about all the precautions. Now, quickly, always people want to know about the pandemic and of course COVID. So we follow the rules of the CDC. We've done our very best to do that. We also follow the rules that are in each local place. So people ask sometimes, are vaccines required or things like that? So we basically go along with the laws. So on a motor coach, you do not have to be vaccinated, but you do have to wear a mask. So people ask all the time. Yes, we do. Now, if we were going to New York City, Philadelphia, Boston right now, all of those cities require vaccine. So you would actually get a message saying that. You would also, prior to being on the trip, get a safeties and protocols from us and a form that you fill out just saying that you agree that while you're on the motor coach that you will wear the mask, you'll do it the right way, and then whatever other protocols are going on in the different areas. And if things change, we've changed along with whatever the advice that comes out. So I'll talk more about trip protection and some of the things that we might want to do to protect ourselves at the very end, because I have been traveling, and many of our staff, we have been traveling throughout. So just to give you an idea, in 2021, in May, I was down in Nashville. In June, I was on a Viking Ocean cruise down to Bermuda, to Philadelphia, Brandywine area, motor coach trips, day trips all throughout the summer and through those months. In October, and the beginning of November, I was on a river cruise, Viking river cruise with a group. We were in Europe, so Germany and Prague. And most recently in the Southern Caribbean, actually on the Rotterdam, the brand new Rotterdam, going to the islands down there. So lots of experience, and I'm going to share with you what those different things are. So if you're unfamiliar with Friendship Tours and what Friendship Tours is all about, let's just share some of that right off the bat. So today, and I'm just going to share my screen with you. So hopefully at this point, you're seeing 2022 escorted land and air tours. And that's really our goal. We're going to talk about 4 of the trips that we have to offer. All of these trips are going to be trips where you're basically flying to a destination. So you would leave from Bradley or from something of the like, and we'll talk about each of those, and then fly to the destination. All of these are also fully escorted, meaning that our staff is actually with you. Now, there are experts along the way on many of these tours as well, but our staff is there to handle any issues as they come up and manage the entire trip. So a lot of you have traveled with our great escorts like Gary and Bob and Eve, Donna McAdams, Kathy, and there's others. So if I've missed anyone, Debbie Gatto. But those are what we mean when we say escort. It means our staff is with you throughout, maybe myself, Heidi, so that gives you an idea. And let's go ahead and just advance to the next slide. So with Friendship Tours, when we talk about the different types of trips, what I like to say is right now, if you're ready to travel, we're ready to have you travel with us. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are on our website right now trips that can be booked for simple motor coach day trips, luncheon shows, overnight motor coach trips. So that would be where you're leaving from the local area via motor coach and traveling to a destination and not staying in your own bed that night, right? It means it's a 2-day or more trip, right? We're staying somewhere else. A fly tour, what we call basically these tours, which are overnight trips where we're using an airplane to go to, those are what we would consider those sightseeing fly types of tours. Cruises. So we have a whole division that is called the Ship Shop. okay, our cruise division. And then we have been doing lots of virtual journeys. So lots of exciting things that are out there. Specifically today, we're going to head out and we're going to do 4 of them. So the first trip that we're going to cover is actually a wonderful trip in Florida, something that we've never ever done before. And this is a little bit north of Tampa, and we're actually going to be heading to the plantation on Crystal River. So that's going to be in April 27 to 30, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that one. The next trip that we're going to do is we're going to virtually go out west. Okay, so we're going to talk about Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons National Parks, and that one's scheduled for August 16th to 21. Then we're going to go back to the East Coast, and some of you have actually gone by motor coach with us when we've gone down to the Great Smokies, or we've gone all the way to Asheville via motor coach. We're going to save time, and instead of spending those days getting to the destination, we're going to leave from Bradley, fly directly into Charlotte, and then take a motor coach out to Asheville. So we'll talk all about that. We'll actually be staying on the property of the Biltmore. So Biltmore Estates, really, really neat. That's in September. So September 19 to 23. And finally, we're going to go down to the islands. We're going to go and fly to Punta Cana and have a winter escape. So this is going to be next December, okay? Or it's actually in 2022, but it feels like a long ways away, right? But it's not. Believe it or not, it'll be here before you know it, December 4 through 9. So that is our goal of where we're heading today. So if you don't mind, we're going to start right off, and we're going to head to Florida, and we're going to make our way to a resort, and we like to call this stay and play. So we're going to fly from Bradley, we're going to arrive in Tampa, we're going to then take a motor coach to the wonderful resort, and we're going to have all kinds of things on this trip. So there's a boat ride with a guide. You can actually swim with the manatees at this area. Now, how many know Christopher Columbus, when he first came to the Americas, he was the first to say, "I have seen mermaids"? Do you know what he really saw? Manatees. And that's why Christopher Columbus thought they weren't that pretty, that he had heard that mermaids were these gorgeous creatures, and when he saw them, he didn't think they had all that to offer. Well, you actually have an opportunity to not only go out and learn about them with a naturalist, but for those that are adventurous, you could actually get in the water with them. Now, in addition to that, there are tons of games, golf, a spa, kayaking, pool, saltwater, fishing, lots of relaxing, sunset cruise, 3 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 3 other breakfasts included. There's actually 2. There's some meals. That's a double, but that's okay. There's always a typo in here. And round trip to Bradley. So let me share what this is going to exactly be like for you. You know what? It's been so long, I forgot to hit the most important button, which is so that you guys can actually hear it. So give me 1 second. Let's do this correctly. Optimize. And let's just go.
A hidden gem, tucked away on Florida's nature coast. The plantation on Crystal River is a stately reminder of what a first-rate resort should be. This haven for ecotourism has successfully implemented green policies that protect the environment and enhance the guest experience. Bordered by water on 2 sides and overlooking beautiful Kings Bay, it's a magnificent setting. Home to manatees and other wildlife, these pristine waters provide guests with endless aquatic adventures. Step inside and the main lobby sets the tone with its graceful decor and warm southern charm. The main bar, West 82, is a great place to unwind, and there's a cozy fireplace to sit and enjoy. The West 82 Grill is the place to eat. Creative casual dining featuring local seafood and other guest favourites. Outside, the most popular watering hole is the Tiki Bar, a great place to swap stories and enjoy a cold brew. Take a dip in the large lagoon-style pool, or soak up some Florida sunshine. For the ultimate in personal pampering, head over to Spa Blue, where you can relax and refresh. Recently renovated throughout, the plantation's comfortable accommodations are warm and inviting, and offer amenities like free Wi-Fi and flat-screen TVs. Ground floor rooms with patios are popular, as are those with views of the waterfront. Junior suites are perfect for families needing a little more space and have a generous seating area. While the conveniently located golf villas are an ideal base from which to hit the links. Golfers of all abilities can challenge themselves over 27 holes, and there's a fully stocked pro shop. Getting down to business at the plantation is easy, as the resort offers over 13,000 square feet of flexible meeting space.
So it is a gorgeous resort, and there's lots and lots to do. I'm going to have Heidi actually quickly run down the day by day, but before we do that, let's show you what that swim with the manatees might be like for those of you that are adventurous. So you could almost see what Christopher Columbus was talking about. Heidi, why don't you go ahead and just quickly run down a little bit about the day by day?
All right, so we're going to have 4 days and 3 nights at this resort. Day 1, we're going to take our bus to Bradley Airport, or you can meet us there, whatever works for you. And we'll fly to Tampa, and then we'll get transferred to a resort, and we'll have a dinner together and a reception dinner prior to dinner. Day 2, we're going to swim with the manatees if you want. If you don't want, you can just hang out in the boat and relax in the sunshine. Because after breakfast, we're going to heading out on our boat, and we'll have a captain and an in-water guide and a chance to enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime experience. And after that, we'll return to the resort, and we'll have some pre-planned activities with the group because we'll have our tour director there. Or you can just enjoy. If you want to sit in a lounge chair under the palm trees, go for it. But our tour director will have plenty to do to keep you busy if you want to be busy. Well, dinner's included that night. On day 3, we're after breakfast, we've got some activities, a pickleball tournament and horseshoes. And then you can also do it if you want to go try out the 18-hole golf course, is one there, or you could go get a spa treatment or rent a kayak. There's a huge pool, a 96,000-gallon heated pool. You could also choose to go swimming. You know, some of those will have additional costs, but it's up to you what you want to do that day. And tonight, our dinner is going to be a poolside cookout, which sounds lovely tonight. And then in the evening, we'll have that sunset river cruise. Day 4, we'll have time for some breakfast together, and then we're going to head out and enjoy there's a town called Heritage Village in downtown Crystal River. And there's a place to go shopping, get some treats. There's explore art galleries, maybe buy the souvenirs you need, and a place you can find someplace to have lunch on your own. And then we'll head to the airport and head on back.
Perfect. So just a couple days of fun, play, and stay. You can do as much or as little as you like. And we're very excited to be able to offer that for the very first time. So that is a trip that you'll see. And from there, we're going to head out to Yellowstone. So Yellowstone, we're heading to not only Yellowstone, the Grand Tetons, and this is a really nice adventure. We're coming in and out of Salt Lake. And Heidi, I'm going to have you go ahead and talk a little bit about this one as well. You'll see this is fully escorted. We're going to start off at Antelope State Park, which is where the Great Salt Lake is. And on the map, you can kind of get a feel. This is a round trip. So starting in Salt Lake, making our way up all the way to the top, Yellowstone, and making our way back down. So you can see all of the details, and let's go ahead and go into each of these slides. So day one, we will have flown out to Salt Lake City and arrive for the afternoon. And that's where we're going to meet our guide that's there. Now, our tour guide will be with you, but we'll actually meet a special guide when we arrive there as well.
So today, once we met our guide at the airport, we're going to head north to Antelope Island State Park. This is on the Great Salt Lake. And we'll stop for scenic Buffalo Point, the spectacular views of the lake and the Wasatch Range of the Rocky Mountains. There will be opportunity to view wildlife on the island, including buffalo, deer, antelope, coyote, waterfowl, and more. And we'll even go to the visitor center where the park ranger will talk to us about the unique ecosystem of this inland salt sea.
So for those that haven't been to Salt Lake, it's actually quite an amazing city. When you fly in, you're flying right in over the mountains. It is a gorgeous city. You're going to notice, one, that the roads in Salt Lake City are enormous. And that's actually because they were designed so that a full cart of oxen can actually go and turn around without having to unhitch. And so still to this day, Salt Lake is magnificent. And I know a lot of you know about the Mormons and the Mormon Tabernacle. Well, we're going to finish in Salt Lake, and you'll actually have a special event at the end. But as we make our way from the city and go out to where it gets its name, which is the Great Salt Lake, this is where Antelope Island is. And I wanted to share a little bit about what this looks like. So you actually make your way, and at one point, this was a grand salt ocean that was in the middle of the continent, and over time, obviously, it has gotten smaller. But this is the beauty of the area. Now, this is one of the visitor centers that you first arrive, that's at the Great Salt Lake at Antelope Island. You get a feel for how much changed from 10,000 years ago. And the wildlife and just the topography is amazing. What makes Salt Lake pretty unique, when you fly in, if you were going to Park City, you could actually be at a ski slope in about an hour and 45 minutes. If anyone's ever gone into Colorado, you land at the airport and you have another couple hours before you get to the Rockies. And so right away, you're going to feel the beauty of the surrounding area. We're going to make our welcome dinner in Idaho Falls. Why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit more, Heidi?
Our hotel in Idaho Falls is right on the bank of the Snake River. We'll be spending one night there.
Then we're off to Yellowstone. For those that don't know, Yellowstone sits on a super caldera. I'm going to show you a little bit about that. But if you've been to Iceland or you've been to some of these areas that are geothermal, this is one of the most active geothermal places in the world. It is magnificent in its ecosystem, and we're going to actually be out there with national park guides. But Heidi, tell them a little bit about this day.
So this is our day 2 on this trip. We're going to be leaving Idaho Falls in the morning and head north along the west side of the Teton Range through the island park on the famed Henry's Fork River. We're going to take a rest stop in West Yellowstone before we enter Yellowstone National Park for some sightseeing. As Brett's telling, it's the first national park as a wonderland of natural beauty and geologic oddities. And I know Brett's going to play us a video about that. It's been delighting visitors for over 100 years. Mysterious land of steaming geysers, fumaroles, and bubbling mud pots, including Old Faithful. And we will have time to go to Old Faithful, and we'll stay there until she does her thing. After we explore Old Faithful, explore more of the geyser basins, including Midway Geyser Basin and the fountain paint pots. And then we'll travel along the beautiful Madison River as we return back to West Yellowstone and check in for a 2-night stay. And that evening, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant.
So not only is the topography and the area of Yellowstone absolutely gorgeous, but the animals are really amazing. And they have worked really hard to actually have the bison come back. And so let's show you what this might be
Buckle
like
up
for you.
and get ready to explore a land untouched by humanity. Yellowstone is a geothermal extravaganza that sits atop a slumbering supervolcano, which is said to have violently erupted over 60,000 years ago. Geologists have long debated the caldera's origins, and theories abound as to when the next big eruption is due. But don't let the merchants of doom put you off. Seismic activity is closely monitored to ensure the safety of park visitors. One of the best places to witness the geothermal activity bubbling beneath Yellowstone is at Grand Prismatic Spring, just under 25 miles from the park's west entrance. Admire the vivid pool from afar, but don't get any ideas about plunging in. These steaming waters can reach temperatures near boiling. Just to the south is Old Faithful, one of the most visited geysers in the world. Aptly named, Old Faithful punctually spews boiling water and steam into the sky every 60 to 90 minutes. The explorers of yesteryear once used Old Faithful as their laundry, placing garments at the vent, which were blasted into the sky and thoroughly washed by the boiling water. This landscape is not only an impressive display of geothermal activity, it is also laced with lush forests.
How many think that's a good way to do your laundry? I always laugh at that one. But from there, the next day, we'll be heading back to Yellowstone to experience a little bit more. And Heidi, why don't you share with that before we go to Grand Teton?
So now we're on day 3. I guess Brett said we're heading back to Yellowstone. And first, we're going to start at the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. And we'll get a chance to see both the upper and the lower falls. And this is where the mighty Yellowstone River has cut its way through sheer rock and cascades down hundreds of feet to the foaming torrents below. Next, we'll drive through the scenic Hayden Valley, and we're going to see this is famous for large herds of buffalo and other wildlife. We'll travel the shores of Yellowstone Lake as we travel south with a stop for lunch along the way. In the late afternoon, we're going to leave Yellowstone via the South Gate and go through Grand Teton National Park. And here we're going to enjoy perfect views of Jackson Lake and the Tetons from scenic points such as Oxbow Bend, the Snake River Overlook, and more. This evening, we're going to arrive in the fun western town of Jackson. We're going to check into our hotel there for a 2-night stay. This old cowboy town is now home to hundreds of art galleries, shops, attractions, and restaurants, but still maintains its western charm. Dinner will be included at a local restaurant.
Jackson is one of the most beautiful places in the Tetons. Actually, if you were to go to my dad's house, he still has one of a painting that goes almost floor to ceiling of the Tetons. It's probably one of the most used in pictures. People paint more pictures of the Tetons than just about anywhere. And the reason why is because they are absolutely spectacular. And let's give you a quick idea of what that looks like.
Smaller and more serene than neighboring Yellowstone, Grand Teton's winding rivers, mirror-like lakes, and jagged granite peaks have long been a magnet for painters and photographers, and it's easy to see why. With a stark absence of foothills, the contrast between the flat, verdant valley floor and the snow-capped Teton Range makes for one of the most dramatic and memorable geological statements in the Rockies. The park was first established in 1929. when forward-thinking local ranchers and business people united to protect this national treasure from rapidly expanding development and commercial exploitation. Today, the best way to enjoy Grand Teton is to buckle up and hit the 42-mile scenic loop, which takes visitors on a grand tour through the park's most awe-inspiring gifts. From the southern entrance, start your adventure on Highway 191 and work your way north, where the Teton Range rises like a chain of towering granite cathedrals. After turning off into Antelope Flats, stretch your legs at the historic district of Mormon Row. Visit John Moulton Barn and T.A. Moulton Barn, two of the last rustic remnants of 27 homesteads built by breakaway Mormon settlers in the late 1800s. Long before European settlers unhitched their wagons here, this bountiful region was the homeland of multiple Native American tribes. The Shoshone people were some of the most frequent visitors, dwelling here in the warmer months to gather food and spiritual sustenance in this place they call Many Pinnacles. As you follow the main scenic drive north, you'll come across many overlooks and turnouts where you'll experience moments of such beauty they'll stay with you for the rest of your days.
Many people say it's the most beautiful place they've ever visited. And with this on day 4, we want to make sure that you are fully immersed. So of course the road is nice, but for those that kind of watch the news, you know, the national parks have been just filled with people the last few years. So we do want to give you some opportunities to get out into wilderness. So Heidi, just run through the day a little bit, and then I want to spend a little time on the scenic float trip that we're going to do on the Snake River.
So this is day 4, and we're going to get up early today and start our day with that scenic float trip on the Snake River. And on this ride, we're going to have the chance to see the giant mountain range as a backdrop, flora, fauna, and just the sheer magnitude of nature. Our river guide will point out wildlife, explain the geology of the area, and tell stories about local history and folklore. It'll be a morning to remember. I'm already thinking, it's like, I'm going to waterproof my camera. Anyway, then we're going to travel to historic Jackson Lake Lodge. This is listed on the National Historic Register and has 60-foot windows that perfectly frame the Tetons. If you might recall, we were all hanging out then. In 1989, there was an agreement between the US and Soviet governments, and that started the end of the Cold War. There will be time here to enjoy the view, explore the lodge, do some shopping, and have lunch on our own. After lunch, we're going to start traveling south along the inner road with picture stops at various scenic viewpoints along the way. And as we explore the park, we'll enjoy another cruise, a short scenic cruise on Jenny Lake, which will give us some more unique photo taking opportunities of the lake in the hidden canyon. And in the late afternoon, we're going to head back to Jackson after an amazing day, and we're free that evening.
So we talked a little bit about the float trip, and so we're not talking whitewater rafting. So this is a leisurely float on the water, and the reason why we have a couple opportunities where we're going on the rivers is this is the only way that you get a really good feel of what the nature is all about. So you have expert guides that are with you that are going to talk about what you're seeing, the animals, the plant life. It's really a pretty magnificent experience to be able to just be immersed in the nature and the grandness of these national parks. So then from there, we will be on to our day 5, and Heidi, go ahead and tell them a little bit as we make our way back towards Salt Lake, what this day is going to entail.
Today, we're going to hit 3 states. We'll drive through the rugged Snake River Canyon, and then we're going to pass through the Pastoral Star Valley, which is a fertile farming valley that stretches across the Idaho border. We'll make a stop at picturesque Bear Lake and then continue to the American West Heritage Center, which is near Logan. And we'll have a tour there, a time for touring and lunch. And here you'll get a chance to experience the cultures and lifestyles for those who lived in the American West from the 1820s to the 1920s. This, which will include Native Americans, mountain men, pioneers, and farmers. We'll arrive in Salt Lake City in the late afternoon and enjoy a brief driving tour of this premier Western city. After we check in our hotel, we'll have a farewell dinner together at a local restaurant.
And so on this day, you will be traveling via motor coach, and you will be covering some pretty decent areas of land distance. When we're here in New England, we're a little bit spoiled, right? If we travel 2 hours, we could be in 3 different states sometimes. Out west, when I went to school, I actually went to school at Colorado State, and then I lived all throughout, including Grand Junction, Colorado, which is the most far west of I-70 before you're right into Utah. And if we were going to travel to Salt Lake, that was 4 hours, about 8 hours to Las Vegas. And we would do these trips all the time. And when I first started traveling, just the sheer openness and the grandeur took my breath away. My friends used to always say, you're not keeping your speed up. I would like to be slow and fast because it was just so magnificent, and seeing it not only during the day, but sometimes I would actually travel at night. And the Snake River, there are places where you go and the rocks all sit almost on top of each other, kind of like they're laying against each other like dominoes. And when the moon hits it, it looks as though it's like a river of moonlight that goes over them. So as you make your way, a lot of times people are like, oh, we're going to be on motor coaches. When you go out west, it takes longer to get everywhere, but it is magnificent. Like, that's half of it, is being immersed in this great land area. So then from there, we are going to end up in Salt Lake City. And there is one last really special opportunity. I know Barbara, who's on, she's actually been at conventions, NTA, and I think you may have had a chance, like I did, to see the Mormon Tabernacle Choir actually perform. And Heidi, why don't you talk about the last day before we head for home?
So this day we've got time. We're going to start our day with some heavenly singing of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Obviously, if their schedule is still permitting it, but it's scheduled. And then we're all going to head to the airport together. But what a great way to start a day and end a trip.
So this is a packed 6 days, 5 nights, and we're really excited about this trip. Again, fully escorted, and we'll give you all the details at the very end on this, but just to run down, August 16 to 21, Idaho Falls, Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, the Scenic Float Tour, Jackson, Wyoming, American West Heritage Center, Salt Lake City, hopefully the Mormon Tabernacle Choir for you, fully escorted, 5 nights, 10 meals. So a really wonderful adventure. And this gives you just one more look at all of the details. Again, you can find all of these listed right on our website, friendshiptours.net, and they are actually under the Fly Tour section of the website. Then we're going to head back virtually today over towards the East Coast, and we're going to make our way to Asheville, North Carolina. So Asheville, North Carolina, when we first started working on our Castles of America last year, and we were able to work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Asheville, they were so great at just trying to make sure that people could travel virtually. And so we reached out to them, and they helped us kind of put together a quote unquote virtual program. It was so well received that everybody said, we really want to go and do an actual trip. So Barbara, I said, I want to make sure that we're not spending all our time on the motor coach getting there. I want to show off Asheville. Why? Because Asheville's history actually coincides a lot with what we've all been going through the last 2.5 years. If you know Asheville in the late 1800s, it started actually, prior to that, it was so remote that most people never ever made their way. Even in the Civil War, there was almost no fighting in Asheville because it was just that remote and hard to get to. Well, in the late 1800s, the train actually first started to make its way out there. And very quickly, they found that it was a wonderful area if people were suffering from ailments like tuberculosis and things like that. That's not a selling feature, I know. But what happened was, like Saratoga Springs and many of these great areas, it became a resort area. And in the late 1800s, for those of you that know the Vanderbilt family, the Commodore, his son William, his wife, after he had passed away, she had an ailment, and one of her good friends invited her to Asheville, North Carolina. Back then, of course, you wouldn't travel as a woman without a male escort of some kind. And so her youngest son, the older three were running the empire, George Washington Vanderbilt, who was actually about 28 years younger than his brothers, he went down with her. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about this, and I can't think of a better way to do it. Before we get there, this is 3 nights at the Village Hotel at the Biltmore. So we're actually staying on one of the Biltmore properties. There are 3 different hotels there. Asheville by foot. This tour is actually going to be led by the gentleman's company that I'm going to share a little video with you in a second, that he did part of our program last year for us. Tour the Basilica of St. Lawrence in Asheville. Asheville is a land of artisans. And the reason why it has so much history with not only construction, art, is because of the Biltmore being built there. And we'll explain why that actually influenced Asheville and its actual history and why it's still tourist today. We're going to tour the Biltmore Estates with time at Antler Village. We'll do the tasting. It's actually the largest winery in the country is actually at the Biltmore. We have the Folk Art Center and the Blue Ridge Parkway as we make our way back to Charlotte. So we're going to fly from Bradley to Charlotte, motor coach to Asheville, spend our days in Asheville, finish up going along the Blue Ridge to Charlotte, have an opportunity in Charlotte to experience something very North Carolina, which is the NASCAR Hall of Fame, before we head and fly back to Bradley. 4 breakfasts, 2 lunches, and 4 dinners. So a lot in this trip. And let's talk a little bit specifically about Asheville for you. So I think the best way to do this is share a little bit of what Kevin had to tell us, and that is what I want to do now.
And they come to Asheville in the summer of 1888, and they stay for several weeks. While they're here, they go on a horseback ride and come to this beautiful vista. In the distance is Mount Pisgah. That's our tallest peak in our county. And he turns to his mother and says, "Mom, we've had such a great time in Asheville that I'd like to build a summer retreat, a little place that the family could escape the hustle and bustle of New York." Mom thinks it's a brilliant idea. And frankly, I think one of the reasons she does is he's 28 and not married. In that day and age, a bit long in the tooth. So she encourages him to move forward with this idea. He gets his attorneys to start secretly buying up property. Why secretly? Well, if you knew a Vanderbilt wanted your land, wouldn't you jack up the price? What would first start off as a 2,000 acre acquisition would end up being 125,000 acre estate, including Mount Pisgah. He would hire Frederick Law Olmsted on your left and Richard Morris Hunt on the right. Hunt would be hired to do the architecture. We've heard his name several times already this afternoon. He is not only the family architect for the Vanderbilts, he's one of the preeminent architects of the period and still one of the preeminent architects of American architectural history. And then the gentleman on the left is Frederick Law Olmsted. He was hired to design the grounds and not only the formal gardens, but to restore the land. Much of the land had been over-timbered and over-farmed. Olmsted is not only a landscape architect, he's quite literally the father of landscape architecture in America. If you're going to hire the guys, these are the guys you hire. Originally, Vanderbilt had in his mind that he wanted to build a modest Italian villa. Well, Mr. Hunt said, "Well, Mr. Vanderbilt, why don't we travel to Europe on your dime and we'll get inspired as to what to build?" So George was very, very resolute about this Italian villa idea until he gets to France and most notably gets to Chateau Blanc. And at Chateau Blois, he is really inspired. Now, I have to admit, if you've never seen Chateau Blois before, it is a bit of a Frankenstein of different architectural periods and styles, but particularly there in the middle, the one with the staircase protruding out was very instrumental in the design moving forward. Also, they get to England and George falls in love with the interiors of British manor homes. And once back in the United States, Hunt begins to design a very French home on the outside and a very English home on the inside. During the nearly 6 years that it would take to construct Biltmore, a name that George coined from the family name Vanderbilt, because they were from the town of Built, Holland, and moor, the English word for rolling hills, like the moors of Scotland, thus Biltmore. It would take the better part of 6 years to build the home. During that time, Vanderbilt would travel throughout Europe, buying everything he could to fill this large home. There's a great story of him entering an Oriental rug market in London, Persian rug market actually, and says, I'll buy it. And he says, sir, I don't understand. I'll buy the whole thing. And he buys the contents of the entire store. Also, he would, during his travels, he would find things of inspiration, such as a ceiling fresco in Italy that he would then telegraph back to Mr. Hunt, let's design a room around this. The house used the latest technology of the era. In fact, technologies that had rarely been used in house construction at this point, one of which is seen here, and that's steel frame construction, a technology barely 15 years old at this point, mainly used to build the earliest skyscrapers, not private homes. The house was finished in 1895. George moves in October of that year. The house isn't quite completely finished, but he'd made grand promises to his family that he would host Christmas at Biltmore. 2 weeks before Christmas, the house is finished. He has a 45-foot fir tree cut down on the estate. And how do you decorate a 45-foot fir tree? Really carefully, right? But also little German glass balls aren't going to show up much. So he has the idea of getting presents for all the children of the estate workers and having them wrapped and hung on the tree, a tradition that Biltmore still carries on 100 and some odd years later. While George is a fairly, he's not an extrovert, he's a fairly quiet fellow. And also not a man that was necessarily one in the social scene of the Gilded Age as his brothers and sisters. He definitely got into the house competition. And in the end, I'd argue he's the one that won out. A banquet hall that would fit not one, but 9 of the average American home today. Stunning 2-story library. He was a man of great learning. And in fact, it was claimed that he had read every volume on the shelf there in the library, as well as some 10,000 other books at the house. We do get snow in Asheville, and so you needed to have a winter garden to be able to keep the summer alive. Lavish bedrooms like this one for his wife and his own. Of course, at that day and age, they were in separate rooms. Biltmore would end up being the largest home built by a private individual in world history. It had a total number of rooms of 250, including 32 guest bedrooms, 49 bathrooms, again, some late technology of the period, 64 fireplaces, an indoor underground pool, a bowling alley. Bowling was not every man's sport at that time. At the turn of the 20th century, bowling is the sport of wealthy folks, actually. Biltmore would be his residence. He would move in 1895, still not married, much to his mother's chagrin, but in 1898, he'd marry Edith Stuyvesant Dresser from an old New York family. In fact, a direct descendant of Peter Stuyvesant, the colonial governor of New York. They get married in 1898, do what you did at that time when you had that kind of wealth and toured Europe, to return home. She took over the running of the estate, which was not a small affair. It had a house staff of 80. to run the home and another 400 to run the estate. She would give birth to their one and only child, a daughter Cornelia, in 1900. They would animate Biltmore as their primary residence, though they would also maintain residences on Fifth Avenue, New York, on K Street in Washington, and Saint Germain in Paris. She would host numbers of parties bringing the who's who of American culture and industry, like the noted author Edith Wharton or the noted inventor and businessman Thomas Edison. From small affairs to larger lavish affairs. I love this photograph. I'm not sure what this party was, but it must have been a good time. If you look at the guy third from the left, he's got a colander on his head. It must have been a great party. Biltmore would increase Asheville's cachet. It would bring a group of artisans and craftsmen to Asheville that cities its size did not have access to, and be one of the key factors in leading to a boom in Asheville. Asheville became one of the bustling towns on the rise throughout the East Coast, with a sensibility by the 1920s that it was going to become one of the major centers of the East Coast.
And so Asheville was designed, and it was had this huge renaissance. And unfortunately, many of us know what happened at the end of the 1920s, the 1930s, and the Depression. And the Vanderbilts were the first to actually turn their house into a museum back then. Kind of like the White House, they would actually roll out the carpets. They would have the little lines keeping the public from going all over the place, and they actually made it profitable, and they employed all the people in the town. And though the town did suffer during the Depression, it was often said that Asheville was first in and first out, and that was when the Biltmore really kind of established. But prior to that, all of the Vanderbilt's friends had come into Asheville, many of them, and started building. And so when we go, Kevin, who was just talking, is going to bring us on our tour on day 2 of the local area, the artisans. Of course, we will be doing a wonderful tour of the Biltmore and the gardens. And this is a little bit more of what that all feels like. Our first evening our second evening, I'm sorry, we will be going out to the Blue Ridge Mountain Opry. So we've got our dinner, we've got entertainment, lots going on and things to see. Staying on the grounds, of course, at the Biltmore Estate at our wonderful hotel. On day 3, we will be in Antler Village and going towards the wonderful winery there. So we'll be doing a tasting. And on day 4, we'll be making our way back to Charlotte, going along the Blue Ridge Parkway and stopping along the way at the Art Center, which is along the way about the culture of the Appalachian Mountains and some of the different artisans that are all there. Then we arrive at the Embassy Suites in downtown. Uptown basically is where we'll be, and we'll have dinner that evening. The next day, before we head out of Charlotte, as I said, we will head off to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. It is one of the neatest museums, even if you have no interest in NASCAR at all. It's so ingrained in the culture of the mountains out there that it really gives you an amazing feel for how Charlotte came to be, what the area is all about, and what drives that city today. The Queen City is beautiful. It's a lot of fun, and we will be then making our way from there back home. So gives you a quick rundown, 3 nights at the Village Hotel on the Biltmore Estates, that wonderful Asheville by foot tour, the Basilica. You can read right through all of these. The flyers are located right on the website at friendshiptours.net. And the last trip that we're going to actually discuss today is, many of you are probably thinking, man, I'd love to get out of the cold that's coming this weekend. Well, we are doing an all-inclusive vacation. So this is going to be round trip flights from Bradley, 5 nights at Secrets Royal Beach Resort. And this is located in the Dominican, Punta Cana. Now, I know Punta Cana very well. Heidi and I actually got married there. We're about to celebrate our 6th anniversary. And we did do a destination at one of the lovely resorts down there. This is going to be Sunday, December 4th to Friday, December 9th. Again, you are going to have our escort along with you. And what's fun about traveling to a place like this with a group of people is that shared experience. And many of you know Friendship Tours was started by my mother, and her love for travel was started when she was young, and she went with a group of Girl Scouts to Europe. During that time, she built friendships that lasted her entire lifetime. And that friendship through travel, that's always what we've kind of built our company on. And we thought, what better way to do this than in the Caribbean? And so we will be heading to the Dominican, and let me share what this resort is all about. Everything that you need all in one spot. I do love showing this room in the bottom right. That's the least expensive room. So it is a gorgeous place, wonderful beach, has those great tiki huts on there, several pools for you to be able to go, a wonderful spa, all those activities, entertainment. So much to this one, and we're going to have a blast. This gives you an idea, round trip flights from Bradley, 5 nights, Secrets Royal Beach Resort. You have unlimited meals and drinks, 7 restaurants, 11 bars, several pools, whirlpools. You can read right through all of this. Activities, and again, we're going to have a ton of fun with a shared group of people, or you can just do your own thing. Escape from the Cold, that's going to be next year, December 4 through 9. So that gives you a quick idea. One of the things that I want to talk about before we end today is, of course, travel protection. And I do want to talk a little bit about COVID and some of those things that you want to be always remembering when we're on these trips. So why would somebody take trip protection? I think in today's COVID world, we already know why, but it's definitely really important, not only before we go on the trip, during the trip, and then to protect us to make sure that we get back. So there's all kinds of different options. So I want to talk a little bit more about that specifically, but for those of you that just are wondering, these are the 4 trips. You can actually go right onto our website to find all of this information. So the Escape Florida Resort, Manatee's Adventure, Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons, the Asheville Biltmore Escape State, and of course Punta Cana, the Winter Escape, all inclusive, December 4 through 9. So, and those are underfly tours. And so I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for a second and bring you all in and talk a little bit about some questions and things that people might have. So I did tell you, Heidi and I have been traveling quite a bit. And so we've had a ton of experiences on the road, including people ask about, the different trip protection. So one of the protections that is available to people, and I think is really important in the COVID world, is to make sure that there is a thing that is bed rest. So in today's world, I know Omicron is changing a lot of things because now the government's talking about that we'll all at one point have this thing and we're going to all get used to it and move more towards an endemic than a pandemic. I don't know if that will be true or not. Like, the one thing we know about the pandemic is what we think we know changes the next week. So those are very, very true. Why I bring this up is while I was in Europe, Heidi and I, we were on a trip. We were tested daily. It was at the beginning of Omicron, and I actually did get COVID right before flying back. I got to stay an extra 14 days in the Dominican Republic. Now, I'm sorry, not Dominican, in Prague. Prague is very strict, completely different than almost anywhere that you may be. So with that, prior to going, I knew that that was a possibility. And we went with actually about 14 of us, and this trip had been planned multiple years ago. Many of the individuals were older individuals. We had people basically ranging from their 60s all the way up. There were actually people in their 90s. And while we were there was the beginning of this new variant. So nobody knew about it. It basically exploded throughout Europe. Now, to give you an idea, in Europe, the rules are a little bit stricter. So all through Berlin and all the way to Prague, you actually had to wear medical masks. They don't do cloth masks or anything like that. K95s. We were tested. We washed our hands. We did all those good things. But this definitely was something that was, it's more contagious, right? And so that's exactly what I found out. Now, I had taken insurance specifically that covered bed rest. And so after 14 days, I was able to submit all of those claims. So I bring it up because there are things that we now know about traveling, and we want to make sure that you are completely informed to the best of our ability. So often people are asking, can you travel? 100%. And in fact, the time that we were in Europe, what's made even Bermuda, we were in Bermuda, we had beaches to ourselves. So right now, if you are willing to go, there are some of the greatest experience of travel that you will ever have. And, you know, my experience, I will tell you straight out, I have had bronchitis that was worse. My stay in Prague was not the most fun thing I've ever done, but I had a wonderful internet connection and was able to basically do that. Now, another gentleman that was with me was 82 years old, had no issues as well. And then another gentleman that was on that trip said something I will never forget. So he was boosted, he had no issues, but he actually has MS. And he said to me straight out, he said, if 2 more years, I will not be able to do this trip. And so for me, going on this trip was completely worth it because I can't get time back. And so right now, when it comes to travel, these are things that you want to consider. Number one, what's your feeling of where you want to go? There's things, as I said, that are day trips that are nice and close. There are motor coach trips, and there, of course, are trips that are far away. And there are options and pros and cons to all of those. So if you have questions about this, we'd love to share our experience, and that's exactly what we can tell. It's up to each person of what they feel comfortable doing, but I just want to make sure that we're letting you know that, yes, travel is definitely out there. People are doing it, and a lot of us have gone a lot of places really, really successfully. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I will invite you, if you would like to go and find out more about any of these types of trips, you can do that simply by going right onto the website. And let's say that you are excited about going to the to Yellowstone, staying in the country and doing a wonderful trip like that. This is right there. You can simply find all the information on the website. If you go ahead and click on to the more information, this tells you about the pricing, tells you about cancellation, trip protection. We have 2 different forms, and we're happy to talk to you about what those options are. And for more information, you would just simply press this button and it will bring you right to the flyer, and it gives you all of what we've talked about today. When you're ready to book, Barbara is able to help you. You can give us a call right at friendshiptours.net or right on the phone, which is going to be up here. Let me go ahead and share this with you as well. And so you'll see all the information that you can get right off of the website, or give us a call. We're happy to tell you. If anybody would like to talk to me about the experiences that we've had during this, I'm happy to share those with you. And I really thank you all for your time. Barb, did I forget anything?
No, I think you guys did an absolutely fantastic job, and I want to go to Yellowstone, by the way. That sounds fantastic.
Excellent.
So
Well,
if anybody has questions, just give me a holler. That's what we're here for.